Hello, today I wish to answer the question, can you beat Resident Evil 2 where every enemy is the Tyrant, or Mr. X? I started the campaign off on Leon on normal difficulty. Starting at the petrol station, we venture into the building. At first, everything's normal, it seems fine. However, as soon as we enter the back room of the petrol station, we start to notice the changes. We take the first enemy, the first Mr. Tyrant X is here, and he instantly punches me out. Now luckily he can't get through this door, and despite my terrible aim, I do manage to take him down. We just quickly run past him, grab the key and leave. Now with this enemy becoming a Tyrant, a Mr. X, every other enemy has as well, which means I need to leave this area quickly before any of the other enemies catch up to me. Almost get hit, but time to run. Now then, we get into the game proper and we're immediately ambushed by 7 Mr. X's. Duking and driving, we managed to make our way past these guys into the alley. Duking and driving this guy, and unfortunately gives us a little push back.
There it is, the station.
We get to the station area, and despite my efforts to take down a Mr. X with a single pistol bullet, those efforts remain futile. And unfortunately I get trapped in a corner, and Mr. X isn't a fan of that, which happens a couple of times, and it happens again, and it happens again. Once I get trapped by 3 of them, it happens again, and at that point the game decided that I was too bad and decided that I should lower the difficulty. However, I chose not to do that at this point in time. It also happens again, and at this point I was actually wondering whether it was even possible to get past these guys at this stage in the game with absolutely no weapons, and I was close to giving up. Anyway, after the 5th attempt, I get tossed around like a ragdoll. I retreat a little bit, hoping that this will stop them from attacking me. Unfortunately, I get pushed up against the car and, as I said, tossed around like a ragdoll. Mr. X is the Tyrants. They just won't let me past. They're beating me into submission. Luckily, one of them decides to pick me up and throws me past them all. So I make a mad dash for the entrance to the police station. And thankfully there are no more Mr. X anywhere near here, and we get inside the station. So I knew I wasn't going to make this run through with just a pistol, so I had to take the infinite knife, the infinite SMG, and the infinite rocket launcher. There was no other way I was going to do that with standard weaponry due to the amount that Mr. X regenerates and how much money he takes. Eventually I get to the first liquor enemy of this game, and this is a rather bizarre enemy that has been changed into a tyrant. He appears to be completely stuck upside down on the wall where the liquor would spawn. He's apparently completely invincible and can't take any damage whatsoever. Ignoring him, I just went through and picked up the battery. Eventually we get to the first boss of the game. Now amusingly, this boss is actually the easiest enemy to deal with in the game, and he is absolutely no trouble whatsoever. All it takes is a couple of rockets to put him down, and that's it. He's been dealt with. The easiest enemy in the game. In fact, all of the bosses in this game are the easiest enemies compared to every enemy being Mr. X. Once we enter the jail cells, there's a nightmarish sound, as every enemy in the jail cell is a tyrant. And if you played RE2 before, then you know exactly what that means later, and I can confirm it's absolutely terrifying. After we get the 2 fuses for the fuse box and we complete the puzzle, we grab the key card and the supplies in this little area, because I'm going to need the health spray for later, and every cell in the place opens up, and that means all cells contain a tyrant. So I was planning on going around the long way, the proper way that you're supposed to go. The tyrants had other ideas about that and decided to just push me through them, so I had to run away. Now there's the tyrant that pops round, and I had decided to have a quick look just to see how many there were there before I ran away. Now that actually went better than I had expected. I was expecting it to go a lot worse. I was expecting to die a couple of times, but thankfully one of them pushed me through. Now after going through the sewers, we end up playing as Ada. Now for some reason, and I'm not quite sure why this was, but 3 Mr. X's decided to spawn right at the spawn location, and this took me completely off guard because usually there's not a single enemy there, but for some reason there was three enemies that just decided to spawn there, and because I wasn't expecting it, my life didn't last very long. Eventually, after several deaths in this one area, I decided to lower the difficulty to easy, due to the fact that I had no chance of actually getting out of this area without the game being on a lower difficulty setting. And eventually I was able to grab the visualizer and quickly get up the ladder. Eventually we get through the sewer with not a lot happening, and we're at the second boss fight, which again is also very easy, just requires a couple of rockets, or a few. I'd just like to make sure he takes enough damage, and then some more and some more, just to be completely certain that he's actually down, and that's all it takes, and using the crane just to knock him off. And that's the second boss fight, the second easiest enemy I've had to deal with in the entire game. Eventually we get to Nest, and we're about to enter the cafeteria. Unfortunately, the cafeteria is obviously all full of Mr. X, and they've all decided to guard the door, and unfortunately due to their mass and their hitboxes, I'm unable to walk past them. So unfortunately I had to wait a bit and just let them regenerate their health and sort of come away from the door. And once they decided to get up, I then decided to shoot them again. They do take their time on the easiest difficulty. They take a lot longer than is really necessary, but it's the easiest difficulty, so that's fine. I took down the Tyrants. The other Tyrants got up, and I decided to shoot those guys down as well. Then I could finally get through the cafeteria, ignoring the T-posing zombie, and climbing up the ladder. Eventually we get through the lab without much fanfare, and we get to the third time we fight the G-Virus. And once again, he's not an issue. He goes down in a few rockets. And we get to escaping the lab. Eventually we get to King Tyrant, who is the weakest Tyrant in the game, despite being the most deadly. And only takes one rocket to go down, as he falls apart in a rather disgusting mess. We reach the bottom of the platform. We're ambushed by the weakest Tyrants. Now, usually these would be normal standard enemies, but they all seem to have about 1 hit point of damage, or 1 hit point, and any single amount of damage will instantly down them. It doesn't matter how little damage you do, they all go down instantly, which is somewhat interesting. And then we make it to the train, and that's pretty much the end of it. So yes, you can beat Resident Evil 2 when every enemy is Mr. X, providing you've got the right weaponry for it. If you had standard weaponry, you've got no chance. There's no chance of you beating it, I feel. But definitely having the infinite SMG and the infinite rocket launcher, along with the knife, is definitely a big help. And I don't believe you'll be able to do it with the standard weaponry, but you can definitely make it just about, with a few rough spots in the game at certain points.